All right, here we go with the second half of the Kingdom of Wrenly and the Sea Monster. And you probably just read the first half, so you remember that Nanny Louisa is telling the story about when she saw the sea monster. She was out on a boat, and there's a sea monster, and it had this cauldron in its mouth, and it threw the cauldron at the ship. And the sailors are throwing things back at the sea monster because they're afraid of it. So that gets us to chapter 6. And the captain of this boat is named Captain Brown. So chapter 6 is called A Message. "Wait! Leave the beast alone," Captain Brown shouted. The fishermen stopped striking the sea monster. The serpent roared and plunged beneath the water. Enormous waves rocked our ship. Green seawater splashed over the deck. "We're done for," I thought as I landed on top of my shipmates. This is Nanny Louisa speaking now. Somehow, I dragged myself to my feet and looked up out of the water. The sea serpent slithered away. Loop after loop of its scaly green body curled through the water as it went on its way. None of us spoke. We looked at the cauldron. Remember, the sea monster threw the cauldron and it landed on the deck. So there it is. So we looked at the cauldron, which had left a large hole in the deck. Had the sea monster been trying to tell us something, we wondered? Perhaps the monster didn't like that garbage was being thrown into its watery home. We all agreed that the people of Wrenly needed to change their ways. Okay, so he's throwing the garbage back onto the ship that people have thrown into the water. Like, see, the cauldron is broken. We learned that in the last chapter. It was looks like it's kind of junk. Somebody tried to throw it away and they threw it out in the water. Captain Brown took us to port. We told King Henry, King Caleb's father. Okay, so King Henry was King Caleb's father, because this happened long ago, what we had seen and heard. The king believed every word of our story. He knew he could trust Captain Brown. "But you must never speak of it," said the king. "We mustn't upset the good people of Wrenly." He also said that if we didn't have evidence of a monster, then no one would believe our tale. Then King Henry made a royal decree. "Hear ye, hear ye." This is a decree. See, in olden days, they would write a formal decree or an order on parchment like this. So it says, "Hear ye, hear ye. By royal decree of the King of Wrenly, no dumping garbage into the sea. Lawbreakers will be thrown into the dungeon for 10 days. That doesn't sound very pleasant. Some of the fishermen told the story of the sea serpent against the king's wishes, but no one believed them. The villagers made fun of the fishermen and called them crazy. But I'm here to say, cross my heart, that every word of this story is true. Everyone sat in silence. Then Lucas said, "I believe you, Nanny Louisa. I've always believed you." "I believe you too," said Clara. "And I," said Queen Sophie. "But what do we do now?" Lucas asked. Chapter 7, Captain Brown. See, there's Nanny Louisa. She's taking care of the fairy queen, Sophie. Captain Brown, Chapter 7. Here's what you must do," said Nanny Louisa as she gave a doll-sized spoonful of a potion to Queen Sophie. "You must find out what's bothering the sea serpent." "But how?" asked Clara. "There's only one way," said Nanny Louisa. "You must find the sea serpent and let him tell you." Lucas and Clara looked at each other and gulped. But Nanny Louisa was right. How else could they find out what was bothering the sea serpent? "We're up to the task," said Lucas and Clara together. Just having my coffee here. Okay. "We're up to the task," said Lucas and Clara together. "Will you come with us, Nanny Louisa?" asked Clara. No, said Nanny Louisa, I must stay here with Queen Sophie until she feels better. Queen Sophie had fallen asleep while they were talking. Then we'll be on our way, Lucas said. Thank you for everything, Nanny Louisa. Nanny Louisa hugged Lucas and Clara. Be careful, she said. Be careful. We will, promised Lucas. Lucas and Clara hurried down the hill to the water. Empty ships bobbed up and down at the dock. Lucas tapped the harbor master on the shoulder. We need a ship, Lucas said. Oh, it must be nice to be a prince. You just walk up and say, we need a ship. The harbor master turned and faced Lucas and Clara. Oh, I'm sorry, Prince Lucas, he said, but the captains have all gone home for the day. Nobody wants to set sail in this rough water. But we're here on official royal business, said Lucas in his most grown-up voice. We need to search for the sea monster. The harbor master stroked his chin thoughtfully. He knew better than to argue with royalty. Excuse me, said a scruffy-looking man. Scruffy-looking, that means he looks kind of poor, not well-dressed, old clothes on. Excuse me, said a scruffy-looking man who had been listening in. May I be of some help? The man had a toothless smile. That means he was missing teeth, just like Acadia is right now, and Grandmommy. So the man had a toothless smile, like a jack-o'-lantern's. He wore a tattered brown coat and old trousers. His knotted gray beard matched his straggly gray hair. His face was weathered, and he had friendly blue eyes. Who do we think this is? I bet you know. Who are you? Asked Lucas. I'm Captain Brown, said the man. Clara and Lucas gasped. The Captain Douglas Brown? Asked Lucas. At your service, said the captain. But how did you find us? Said Clara. A special friend sent for me, said Captain Brown. She said it was urgent. Nanny Louisa, cried Lucas. Aye, she may have had a bit of a part in it, said the captain. I'm not sure I like the idea of a prince and a young maiden hunting for sea masters, interrupted the harbor master. So the harbor master is kind of worried now. Doesn't want the prince and Clara to go out and have a problem with the sea monster. But Captain Brown is going to ignore the harbor master. So Captain Brown says, Come, said Captain Brown, ignoring the harbor master. My ship, the Blue Moon, awaits. Have you any payment? Have you any payment? Lucas and Clara looked at each other. They didn't have a single shilling. Then Clara reached into her pocket and pulled out her shell necklace. Captain Brown smiled. That will do nicely, he said. Let's go and find ourselves a sea monster. Then they followed the toothless, bearded captain to his ship. And who is it that's still following them? You can see. That's right. It's Ruskin. Chapter 8. An Old Friend. The ship pulled away from the dock and suddenly leaned to the right. Boom. Lucas and Clara held onto the side of the ship to keep from tumbling into the water. How are we going to find the sea monster? Asked Clara. Don't worry, said Captain Brown. The sea serpent is going to find us. What could be bothering him? Lucas asked. We shall soon find out, said the captain. Sailing around the mainland, they passed Hobbs Grove, Crestwood, and Berth. Salt water sprayed as they rowed up and down the waves. Lucas thought he saw something flicker in the crow's nest. I wonder what that could be up there. I bet it's Ruskin. He looked closely, but his eyes didn't see anything. My eyes must be playing tricks on me, he thought. When Primlocks came back into view, they had seen no signs of the sea monster. Where is that old beast? The captain shouted over the wind. Let's go around again, yelled Lucas. It's too rough, said Captain Brown. We'll try tomorrow. Please, begged Lucas. Just one more time around. Before Captain Brown could answer, the ship began to rock violently. The ocean rumbled like thunder. The water churned and boiled like a bubbling broth. Hold on, Captain Brown shouted. Clara and Lucas clutched the side of the ship with all their strength. What's happening? Lucas cried. There they are. Oh, I bet the sea monster's making the water rough. It's my old friend, shouted Captain Brown as he pointed to the water up ahead. The sea monster. There it is. Lucas and Clara saw the beast rise out of the water. They both screamed. It had the head of a fearsome dragon and a neck that stretched on forever, just as Nanny Louisa had described. Its green scales shimmered in the gray afternoon light. The ship jerked violently this way and that, this way and that. Lucas lost his grip and tumbled across the deck. He managed to grab hold of a rope to keep from falling into the water. When he looked up, the sea monster towered over the ship. It roared. Then it lunged right at them. Captain Brown spun the wheel away from the sea monster, but the captain lost control of the boat. Seawater flooded the deck. Hang on, the captain cried. Chapter 9. A swirl of fire. Have a little coffee here. Okay, there are 2 chapters left. A swirl of fire. Somehow the ship stayed afloat, but the sea monster roared with fury. It's going to swallow us whole, Lucas thought. He squeezed his eyes shut. Lucas, open your eyes, shouted Clara. I see something caught on the sea monster's head. She's right, Captain Brown shouted. Lucas opened his eyes and looked. Oh, look at that. I don't know if you can see that. It's a net. A net is on his head. A net. He hadn't seen it before, but the sea monster had a net stuck on its head. How can we free it? Asked Clara. We need to get closer, shouted Lucas. I don't know. Too dangerous, cried Captain Brown. Squawk! Cried something from the crow's nest. Squawk! What was that? Shouted Lucas. Up there, yelled Clara. A streak of red flew from the crow's nest. It's Ruskin, Lucas yelled. Ruskin squawked again and flew onto the sea monster's head. The sea monster tried to shake him off, but Ruskin climbed to him. What's he doing? Captain Brown shouted. I think he's trying to free the sea monster, said Lucas. Look. There we go. There's Ruskin. There's a sea monster. He looks happy because he thinks Ruskin is hopefully going to get this net off his head. Okay, I think he's trying to... Okay, Ruskin pulled at the net on the sea monster's head. He tugged and tugged, but the net wouldn't come free. Suddenly, Ruskin roared and a little swirl of flame burned away some of the netting. Then Ruskin easily removed the rest of the net and flew a short distance away. The sea monster shook its head. Its face became calm and it sank back into the sea. The water stopped churning and the boat stopped jerking this way and that. Ruskin flew back to the ship and landed on the deck. He dropped the net at Lucas's feet. Clara leaned over and picked it up. It's an old fishing net, she exclaimed, just like the ones I use to string my shell necklaces. The fishermen must be tossing their old nets into the sea, said Lucas, and this one got tangled around the sea monster's head. No wonder the sea monster was mad, said Captain Brown. See that? See the net there? Oh, the shadows on this. Need better light in here. Wow. Uh-oh. You know what this? It looks like we're missing a page. No, we're not. We're not missing a page. This page just got torn a little bit, but we're not missing one. That's good. Okay. Wow, said Clara. If it hadn't been for Ruskin, the sea monster would have sunk our ship. Good boy, Ruskin, said Lucas, patting him on the back. You used your fire to do something good. Ruskin rubbed his head against Lucas's legs. How do you think Ruskin found us? Asked Clara. I'm not sure, Lucas said. I must have left the escape exit open, and then he was able to follow us by flying high above. Your dragon saved the day, Captain Brown said as he steered the ship toward Primlocks. Ruskin squawked. He sure did, Lucas said. Chapter 10. Okay, this is the last chapter. And the name of the chapter, there we have Clara on Scallop, and then we have Prince Lucas on his horse. And the name of chapter 10, the title is A Royal Decree. The ship docked at Primlocks, and Lucas and Clara said goodbye to their new friend, Captain Brown. They unhitched Ivan and Scallop and galloped back to the palace. Ruskin flew close behind. The sun had gone down by the time they reached the stables. The stable hand began to feed and water their horses. Lucas and Clara thanked him and raced to the great hall with Ruskin at their heels. The queen, the king, and Anna jumped up from the table when the children walked in. Where on earth have you been? Demanded King Caleb. We were so worried, said Queen Tasha. Just look at you two, said Anna. Lucas and Clara looked like they'd been washed in with the tide because they got all wet and everything on the ship. Their clothes were soaked and they had seaweed tangled in their hair. We went looking for the sea monster, said Lucas. The king raised his hands and looked at the ceiling. And did you find one? He asked. Lucas and Clara looked at each other and grinned. Then they shared their adventure. And Ruskin freed the sea monster with a little swirl of fire, finished Lucas. Clara pulled the fishing net from her pouch and placed it on the table. The queen and Anna looked it over. Quite a remarkable tale, said the king. You two certainly have wild imaginations. So the king doesn't believe them. Then Queen Tasha put a hand on the king's shoulder. I'm not sure they're making it up, she said. Look at this. Caught in the net was a shimmering green scale. The king untangled it and looked at it closely. He turned it over and rubbed it between his fingers. So it's a scale from the sea monster. Well, look at that, said the king. Now do you believe us? Said Lucas. Yes, said the king. I'm afraid I do. Lucas folded his arms. There's one thing I don't get. What's that? Asked the king. How come people get scared when they hear rumors of a sea serpent? And then, if someone actually finds one, they don't believe it. Well, said the king, sometimes you have to see something in order to believe it. Like you, King Lucas asked. Yes, said the king, like me. I have to see something to believe it. Are you going to tell the people of Wrenly that the sea serpent is real? Asked Lucas. Yes, said the king as he laid down the scale on the table. Since we have proof, I will tell the people, and I will also make a new decree. I shall call it the rule of the great sea serpent. From now on, no fishing nets shall be thrown into the sea of Wrenly. They must be mended or thrown away properly. Lawbreakers will be sent to the dungeon for 10 days. Then Lucas made his own royal decree. Hear ye, he said in a loud voice. I hereby proclaim that I am as hungry as a sea monster. Me too, Clara chimed in. Everyone sat at the table except Ruskin, who sat on the floor beside Lucas's chair and had a dinner of pork roast, vegetables, and Ruskin's favorite, apple fritters. Ruskin ate 5 apple fritters and burped. A little ball of fire slipped out and charred the tablecloth. Everyone laughed, even the king. It looks like that's the end. Yep, that's the end. There's Ruskin. He had a little burp and he charred the tablecloth. But they all like Ruskin now because he was able to get the net off the sea serpent. That's it. That is the Kingdom of Wrenly Sea Monster. I hope you girls enjoyed it, and I'll have to look for another book soon. Bye-bye, girls.